Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another new episode of the You Got the Ron Dude podcast. I'm your host, Ron Jammin. Thank you very much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. The podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm, YouTube, and more. I'll have links for you in the description, so check those out. If you're listening on Anchor, you can actually leave a voice message. So if you want to leave a comment, a review, inquire about something, feel free to. Otherwise, leave some comments. I'd love to hear from you. This episode is all about the good old MySpace days, which I thought were going to last forever, but they didn't. So I got a lot of notes to go over, some pretty interesting, wild, kind of creepy stories to go over. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's start with this stuff I'm ashamed of. I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? And this borders on creepy. And when you think about it, like not disturbing or anything, but just like, wow, really? So I pretended to be Leonardo DiCaprio because, around that time, The Departed was a huge hit. Tobey Maguire because Spider-Man 3 was about a year out. And I even created like a Van Halen page. You'd always put official after the name of someone to convince people. I may have pretended to be James Vanderbeek because I was in Dawson's Creek. But, and Elijah Wood. That was another one. That wasn't even in my notes. But basically, when it started out, I put up my own profile. But I'm like, who's going to look for me besides, the few friends I had? And it's so exciting. You're like, I wonder what it's like to be famous. And I wish I could go back and pick my brain because I don't remember. If it was like insecurity, desire to know what it's like to get be flooded with messages and stuff. But eventually that went away because it's like, I want to connect with people. I want them to find me, my work, my stuff. But it was just so new, so exciting. And I discovered MySpace and YouTube the same day in early May of 2006. I was working at Guitar Center. And that ended. And then I think like that night, basically I was looking for a Mission Impossible 3 trailer because I saw a clip on Yahoo when Ethan, it's that bridge attack scene and he gets blown away by that missile and hits that vehicle. And I wanted to watch it again and again. I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. So that got me to YouTube. And MySpace, I worked at Guitar Center, and bands would talk about it. You'd hear little whispers of it. And of course, Dane Cook was huge on it. So that may have been what introduced me to MySpace. But I got on, and I had my page, and then you could create other pages in that. So Leo, Toby, Elijah, Vanderbeek, Van Halen, and probably many others. You'd create band pages because you want to connect with people. But it's one of those things like they say when you become a comedian, you're emulating all the comics that you like. In a way, not their material, but their mannerisms and such. And then eventually you shed that because it's like, oh, I get it. Because you find yourself, your voice. And that's what happened with this. Not to make excuses, but it's just looking back, it's like I would never do that stuff today, and I haven't since. And because you think like, well, I didn't want to take away anything from the people if these people actually had official pages in that. But it was just a fun time, wild, but inevitably pretending to be someone, it doesn't do anything for you because people aren't connecting with you. They're looking for that person. So I shed that, but hopefully that makes sense. And here's something else. Now this is borderline creepy, but looking back, I had really good intentions. But again, social media was rather new. So when I got on there, I would add people just because they lived in the same city as me. And again, just like the, pretending to be other people, you shed that because, you live and learn. It's just exciting because you're like, oh, I can add all these people. I would search by my city name and then just add people. I don't even think based on interests. It's just, wanting to connect with people and that. But I definitely, I look back and I'm like, oof. Because eventually that stopped. Because people be like, hi, why did you add me? I'm like, oh, I see you live in, the same city as me. We should connect. So not really understanding social media. Because eventually it becomes, I started creating more and more stuff, more content. And it's like, oh, I get it. You want people to add you, to follow you, to watch your stuff. But it's just something I kind of cringe at, because nowadays it'd be like, you couldn't pay me to do that. I mean, you could. If you give me $1 million, I'll do it, no problem. But looking back, it was just such an exciting time, and it was so new. But it's funny, it seems like a lot of people just accepted my request, even inquiring, and I'm just like, oh, I see you live in the same city, and I had no agenda. I'm not a salesperson or anything. And but yeah, I'd love to hear from you. What were you like when you first got on social media? No matter if it was Friendster, MySpace, Facebook, whatever. So leave some comments. One benefit of MySpace is that I learned to code HTML. I'm pretty sure all of us did, because you could have the standard profile, or you could edit it and put up a cool background. You could edit all the buttons, boxes, and such, which is really cool. Now, if you put me in front of a computer, I wouldn't know where to start. I don't remember any of that. I haven't used it since, because that was a long time ago. The fall of MySpace, it was 14 years ago? But that was one cool thing, but I imagine that led to the eventual downfall. Why people had so many errors in that. And who could forget the top friends? Started out with maybe it was top 4. I remember top 8 specifically. And then that just became top 16, top 24, 32, and maybe so on. But you could start wars with friends. You go to work and they're like, oh, hey man, you okay? It's like, yeah, I'm fine. Oh, okay, I just noticed I got demoted in your top friends. Because they could be in the top 8. They were number 1, depending how you look at it. And now they're at the bottom row. And they're like, what's up, bro? You mad or something? Now, that never happened with me, but, you hear stories about that stuff. And, top 32, it's good gosh. Just the top friends thing. It worked at the time, but now, the relationships it ruined and all the wars it started, but it was fun, rearranging friends and such. But now you look back and it's ooh, I wouldn't do that. Just tell me what friends I have, that's it. And another cool thing about MySpace is that when you could first reach out to celebrities. Because again, I got on in mid-2006, so I think that's when it was in its heyday, really popping, really fun. I remember of December of 2006 reaching out to Samantha Mathis. And I was asking her about the sequel for Super Mario Brothers, whatever happened with that. And she said they actually planned multiple sequels, but obviously nothing came of that. And that was just really cool. It was a quick conversation, but it meant a lot to me. Yes, I like that movie a lot. Seeing that in theaters, it's kind of wow, this is nothing like the video game at all. It's kind of like The Last Jedi for Mario Brothers. Jim Gaffigan, when you would friend him, he would leave a comment, a silly comment, which I liked. I appreciated that. Because I would brag about that to people, oh, me and Gaff? Yeah, Jay Gaff, we're old friends. But that was probably the most exciting thing, was reaching out to celebrities or, whether it's music, acting, writing. It was just really, really cool to hear back from them. And of course, who can forget the mass exodus to Facebook? I want to say mid-2009, I swear, just like a flock of birds. And it seemed like all at once, like everybody just moved over to Facebook. And I wish I could remember that time more vividly, but it's kind of like you're being evicted and you're like, oh, we got to be out today? And then you go to another place and it's like, oh, wow. Because, like I said, I joined MySpace in like mid-2006. And it's one of those things you figure, we're at least going to have a decade of awesomeness with this. Like, what else is going to come along? Facebook, as you may or may not know, was initially designed for college campuses, for universities and that, to talk to each other. And which is great, but all the errors that MySpace was having and all the complaints and things not being fixed, it was a good opportunity for Facebook. I'm sure Mark to this day is still blown away. Because, you could argue 99% of all users went to Facebook or just left MySpace. But just a mass shift. And it's kind of like with, video stores. Like, you just don't see any. You're like, they're all gone? I think there's still one Blockbuster, but you get my point. But it's that huge shift where it takes, like, everyone away from one thing to another. But, MySpace, they could have done better. I don't think I've ever downloaded their mobile version. I don't even know if they have one. But it's kind of, too late for that. Unless, people over the years have said, like, oh, Facebook is done, Twitter's done. But they always say that. And it's like they still have millions and millions of users, maybe hundreds of millions, and page visits in the millions on a daily basis. But yeah, that time it was wild because it's like we're all going to Facebook. And yeah, that was just amazing how fast everything moved. Okay, a little bit of history. Financials of MySpace, acquired by News Corp in 2005 for $580 million. Holy moly! That's a good chunk of change, Uncle Johnny. Justin Timberlake acquired it in 2011 for $35 million. That is quite a difference. Now, $35 million is still a lot of money. I could live off $35 million. I'll prove it. Send it to me. But since then, it has been acquired and sold and that to other corporations. But in 2011, they introduced the side-to-side scrolling on computers. And I think that would work best for mobile, for the mobile app. I'm not sure if it does that. But on a computer, it's just like, really? And then the look of it changed, but then you couldn't edit, as far as I can remember. But it just had a basic look. But the relaunch, it was just like, huh. And yeah, it didn't really take, it seemed like. I made a video about it on my YouTube channel, but, because it was exciting. It's like, oh, what's going on? Is it going to be better? Is it going to look better? Less errors, no errors, but just didn't seem to take. But by that time, everybody's on board Facebook. I remember a few or maybe several years ago, somebody brought back retro MySpace, like on a separate site. And it's one of those things I was like, heck, it's the original MySpace. But I believe they got flooded with users. I don't think they could keep up with demand because you're probably dealing with a lot of storage if people can edit their pages. That I signed up and I swear like maybe a couple days later it was just gone. But that was an interesting idea. But at the same time, it's like if something's not in demand, I can understand. Maybe they thought a few hundred people or a few thousand would sign up. Maybe they got overwhelmed, like thousands, hundreds of thousands signed up. But that, and if it's not a mobile-friendly version, I would opt out of that. And one thing I do miss, maybe the biggest thing, was the music artist pages. Specifically being able to search for not only local bands, but new ones. Kind of like you do on YouTube. Like you'll look up somebody and then you can go by upload date or other filters. And that I miss because, all the bands that I discovered, all the local ones, like they eventually broke up or moved on or whatever. But it was cool at the time because you reach out, they're brand new, you're a fan of their tunes, and you get to actually talk to them. And you remember the MySpace secret shows? I don't think that's still a thing, but that and like Snowcap, that program they launched to pay artists. At the time, I was either just getting into music or I didn't have anything ready, making stuff on my computer. But that was a program. It was, I remember it was like a Snowcap, like its own music player. And yeah, it would pay artists. I never really looked into it, or I don't remember the financials and that, but that was pretty cool. But unfortunately, that seemed like towards the end of MySpace in their heyday. So that didn't really go anywhere. I don't even know if that's still a thing. But yeah, I miss just being able to do that. Because, I guess you could kind of on YouTube, but you can't do it on Facebook. You can still look up, search bands and artists and that. But I love that feature on MySpace. Well, I remember my first MySpace page, all decked out Star Wars. Revenge of the Sith specifically. I was obsessed with the movie at that time. It was maybe a year old. And just the whole page, all Star Wars. And I think one of the friends I connected with was like, it's a lot of Star Wars. You like it, huh? Because I would watch that movie all the time. Mostly the action sequences. Those I loved. And, eventually you move on from that, because I'm sure I had other, like, movie pages, music artists and stuff you'd put on your page. But over the years, I just started developing my own channel art. Something like you'll see on YouTube. And you kind of steer away from that. But at the time, you'd put in, all your favorite TV shows. I would think of every movie I liked and put it in that section. Looking back, I'm like, that's pretty insane. Maybe I should have just taken a photo of all my movies that I had on DVD at the time. And another thing, this is kind of creepy looking back, but I had good intentions. I was in love with Emmy Rossum. I had a huge crush on her. I first saw her in the movie Genius on the Disney Channel and just fell for her. But I would post these photos and then these quotes underneath, like, don't worry, darling, I'll be there soon. Or quotes about love and, stuff like that. And looking back, it's creepy to the outsider, I'm sure. Kind of like, huh. And I don't know if I ever connected with her on MySpace, if she was even on at that time. But yeah, so those were the early days of my MySpace adventures. Another page I had, I also put it up on YouTube, I believe. It was for this story I'd started writing while working at Guitar Center. I started jotting down all these notes for a story I'd outlined. And I had this title, a working title, and I still haven't finished it. Not that I've been working on it this whole time, but it's one of those things, like I jotted down everything I thought of, and then I'll come back to it eventually. But I had, MySpace page for it, and it's this book that I'm promoting, but it's like it doesn't even exist. So, but it was just so exciting at that time, because I'm like, it's like create your own Hollywood account, but then you realize, we're starting from scratch. Like, you don't have fans or followers. Nobody's looking for you. But it was really exciting at the time. And the trailer that I put on YouTube, that was with like the blue screen and the white text. I didn't even like edit anything back then. It was like Windows Movie Maker. So no editing as far as, different text or special effects or anything. But I just remember it was just such a fun time back then. Just really exciting. Well, sometimes whenever I hear MySpace, I think, they're still around, but I don't know why. It's one of those things, it's that major shift where it's like, not even Tom's on there, and it's like everybody's gone for the most part. But I'm curious these days, if they had progressed and they, they didn't have much competition like Facebook, if they would have had a partner program, something like Snowcap, that's for music artists, but something else for, basic users. That'd be interesting. I'm just curious, what was his plan, his outline for it? Because, this is one of the first social networking sites. So some people are like, money, what? Even when YouTube started, believe it or not, there was no partner program. That took a few years to get going. But, I'm just curious. Maybe somebody has made a video or could make one about what you think MySpace could have been like. Would they have branched out? Would there be no need for Instagram or anything, or Snapchat? If they had a great mobile version, just take over, and there's no need, just like YouTube doesn't really have any competitors. You could argue TikTok, but that's more short form content. And it's funny when you think back, because it would show your last login and if you're online. And again, it was just so fun and exciting in those times. But now it's like, well, who cares when I was last online? And again, back to YouTube, the early profile pages, when they'd have all this information, some of it, it's like, well, I want to see the view numbers, but profile views, And last login, that stuff, I'm not saying it's completely irrelevant, but it's just like, well, who cares? Oh, you're not online, okay. So what, I'm not going to talk to you? You can still message people. But I always love logging in, new friend requests, new messages, new comments. It was just so exciting. And, I still get excited in that when I get messages and such, because I always love hearing from people. But Facebook, when everybody jumped ship and hopped aboard the Facebook, Facebook hasn't really evolved their look much. They've always kept it simple. But that's how essentially they won. That's how they took over. Because when you let people code their own pages and insert stuff, and there's a bunch of errors, and then just regular site errors, people are like, I'm sick of this. So everybody fled. And Facebook, I was disappointed, because when I first got on there, I was like, well, this is really plain. You couldn't do too much, couldn't edit much. But then you realize, well, it's not a bad thing. It's just different. Well, I appreciate you listening to this episode. If you have any comments, inquiries, anything, you want to share your experiences on MySpace, if you're listening on Anchor, you can leave a voice message. Otherwise, leave a comment elsewhere. I'd love to hear from you. Check out the links in the description. And, I look back very fondly on those days. And then, of course, the major shift to Facebook seemed so sudden. But I don't really miss that time. I just miss the kind of the energy, the feeling. It's just like growing up in the 90s, it seemed like just everything was cool. And you kind of miss that. But times change. People move on. MySpace just didn't evolve. They had a lot of coding issues or whatever it was. But I'm curious what Tom's up to. But so I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. Subscribe, follow, share, like, do all that stuff. Stay tuned for endless episodes of the podcast. And I will see you next time.